How John Lennon Died, the tragic story of his murder by a crazed fan. John Lennon was one of the most iconic and influential musicians of the 20th century, as a member of the Beatles and as a solo artist. He was also a peace activist, a political dissident, and a controversial figure. He had a turbulent childhood, a troubled marriage with his first wife Cynthia, and a passionate relationship with his second wife Yoko Ono. He was shot and killed by a deranged fan, Mark David Chapman, in 1980 at the age of 40. The shooting, on the evening of December 8, 1980, John Lennon and Yoko Ono returned to their apartment building, the Dakota, in New York City, after a recording session at the Record Plant Studio. They had spent the day promoting their new album, Double Fantasy, which was released a month earlier. They had also given their last interview to RKO Radio, in which Lennon expressed his happiness and optimism about his life and career. As they approached the entrance of the Dakota, a young man named Mark David Chapman was waiting for them. He had been lurking outside the building since the morning, hoping to get a glimpse of his idol. He had even met Lennon earlier that day, when he asked him to sign his copy of Double Fantasy. Lennon obliged and even posed for a photo with Chapman, who thanked him and wished him good luck. Chapman, who was 25 years old, was a former security guard from Honolulu, Hawaii. He was a fan of the Beatles, but had developed a hatred and resentment towards Lennon, especially after he heard his 1966 comment that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus. He was also obsessed with J.D. Salinger's novel The Catcher in the Rye, which he identified with the protagonist, Holden Caulfield, who despised the phonies of the world. Chapman saw Lennon as a phony who preached peace and love, but lived a rich and decadent lifestyle. He also wanted to emulate Caulfield, who fantasized about killing people he disliked. Chapman had planned to kill Lennon for several months and had traveled to New York with a .38 special revolver and 5 hollow point bullets. He had also written a letter to a friend in which he explained his motive and quoted a line from The Catcher in the Rye. "The catcher in the rye is my statement." He had also bought a copy of the novel in which he wrote "This is my statement" and signed as Holden Caulfield. As Lennon and Ono walked past him, Chapman pulled out his gun and fired 5 shots at Lennon's back. 4 of them hit Lennon, who staggered into the lobby of the Dakota, where he collapsed. Ono ran to him and cradled his head, screaming for help. The doorman of the building, Jose Perdomo, confronted Chapman, who had dropped his gun and was holding his book. Perdomo asked him, "Do you know what you've done?" Chapman calmly replied, "I just shot John Lennon." The aftermath. The first policemen to arrive at the scene were Steve Spiro and Peter Cullen, who were patrolling nearby. They found Lennon lying on the floor, bleeding profusely, and Ono crying beside him. They decided to take him to the hospital in their car, rather than wait for an ambulance. They placed Lennon on the back seat, and Cullen drove as fast as he could, while Spiro tried to keep Lennon conscious. He asked him, "Are you John Lennon?" Lennon nodded slightly and then lost consciousness. They arrived at the Roosevelt Hospital within minutes, where Lennon was rushed to the emergency room. There, a team of doctors led by Dr. Stephen Lynn tried to revive him, but it was too late. Lennon had lost 80% of his blood, and his heart had stopped. He was pronounced dead on arrival at 11:15 p.m. Meanwhile, Chapman was arrested by the police, who found his letter and his book. He was taken to the 20th precinct, where he was booked for murder. He showed no remorse or emotion, and said that he had killed Lennon to acquire his fame. He also said that he had considered killing other celebrities, such as David Bowie, Johnny Carson, and Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, but he chose Lennon because he was the easiest to find. The news of Lennon's death spread quickly and shocked the world. Crowds of fans and media gathered outside the Dakota and the hospital, and vigils and tributes were held in various places. Many radio stations played Lennon's songs, and some of his friends and colleagues, such as Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, Elton John, and Bob Dylan, expressed their grief and condolences. Lennon's body was cremated the next day, and his ashes were given to Ono, who requested 10 minutes of silence around the world in lieu of a funeral. The trial and the legacy. Chapman pleaded guilty to murdering Lennon and was sentenced to 20 years to life imprisonment. He is currently incarcerated at the Wayne Correctional Facility in New York, where he has been denied parole 12 times since he became eligible in 2000. He has expressed regret and remorse for his crime, and said that he was a confused young man who was seeking self-glory. He has also said that he has found God and peace in prison, and that he hopes to be forgiven by Ono and Lennon's fans. Lennon's death was a huge loss for the music industry and the world. He was one of the most influential and acclaimed artists of all time, with a legacy that spans decades and genres. He was also a visionary and a leader who inspired millions of people with his messages of peace, love, and social justice. He was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, both as a member of the Beatles and as a solo artist, and received numerous awards and honors, such as the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, the Brit Award for Outstanding Contribution to Music, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. His songs, such as Imagine, Give Peace a Chance, and Happy Xmas, have become anthems for various causes and movements, and his image and quotes have become symbols of hope and change.